All right, so today we are, this is lesson 10 or session 10. We're covering chapters 19 and 20. So our topics for today, we're going to talk about cities of refuge, boundary markers, rules for eyewitnesses, and then in chapter 20 we'll talk about rules for warfare. In my email, if you read that, we're not going to make references to Star Wars here. It's just just rules for warfare. Actually, we might try to work one in. We'll see if we can work one in. So that'll be the challenge for today. Is how many Star Wars references can we work in?
Challenge accepted.
Pardon?
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, challenge accepted. All right. So let's start with. We talked about the cities of refuge. We're going to go backwards to Book of Numbers, or start there, and and I'm going to read mostly what's in these are fairly long passages, so I'm just going to highlight some of the information that's in white. It says in Numbers 25, Moses is writing. It says, "You shall give 3 cities access across the Jordan, and 3 cities in the land of Canaan. They are to be cities of refuge. These 6 cities shall be for refuge for the sons of Israel, and for the sojourner, and for the foreign resident among them, that anyone who strikes a person down unintentionally may live there." So there's a couple of rules. We'll come back and summarize this, but you see a few things here. There's 6 cities here mentioned, and this is for the sojourner, this is for the foreigner, this is for basically anybody who takes refuge in the city of refuge.
Is this a sanctuary city?
Oh, well, okay. So we could talk about Star Wars, not politics. All right. The murderer shall surely be put to death. So what's the difference between, there's an unintentional, but then talks about the murderer separately. So we see that's repeated several times. The murderer shall surely be put to death. The murderer shall surely be put to death. The blood avenger himself shall put the murderer to death. So what happens to the murderer?
Dies.
The murderer dies. So who's the city of refuge for?
Not a murderer.
Not a murderer. Well, actually, the word is a murderer, but an intentional murder. That's the distinction. So, but the one who is intentionally a murderer is to be put to death, and their blood is on the avenger, the blood avenger or the family avenger. Usually, the nearest relative has the right to put that person to death. Okay. So Deuteronomy chapter 4, we're getting closer to our text. Then Moses set apart 3 cities across the Jordan to the east toward the sunrise. So before they crossed into the promised land, Moses went ahead and set aside 3 cities on the east side of the Jordan, that a manslayer may flee there. Those cities are Ramoth, or Bezer, Ramoth, and Golan. Then we move into chapter 19. This is our text for today. It says, when Yahweh your God cuts off the nations whose land Yahweh your God gives you, and you dispossess them and settle in the cities and in their houses. So basically, when you're entering into the promised land, you shall set apart 3 cities for yourself in the midst of your land, which Yahweh your God gives you to possess. So in the land that you are possessing, you're to set apart 3 cities of refuge. Now, this is the case of the manslayer who may flee there and live there when he strikes down the friend without premeditation, not hating him previously. So that's the criteria for the person who can enter into the city of refuge, is the person who has not hated the person previously. It's not premeditated. And he gives an example here, which, I was cracking up when I was reading this. It's kind of funny. As when a man goes to the forest with his friend to cut wood, and his hand swings the axe to cut down the tree, and the iron head slips off the handle and strikes his friend so that he dies. He may flee to one of the cities of refuge.
Okay, I was working with a grubbing hoe, and my papa was standing right there, and I was like, if this thing slings off, it will be bad.
Was it intentional?
Well, I didn't have to think.
Yeah.
So it is possible today still.
Yeah, but the bottom line is, And we'll see this in a little bit, but you still committed murder, according to the plot, and there's still a price to pay. And that's what we're gonna see here in just a little bit. But they make a distinction between the intentional versus the unintentional. All right.
Just a comment, it struck me reading this that he doesn't delineate if you get in a fight, right? And one person kills another person. And I guess it would be if the fight was originated by the one that slayed the other one.
And I think that's the criteria. Well,
Because otherwise it's defense.
Yeah, exactly.
well, I also think that it's, what is your intention?
Yeah.
Is it premeditated?
Right.
Like, if we got into a kerfuffle out in the hallway about something and I slugged you and you
Like Sunday school times.
Right. I didn't intend to, I didn't come at you with the premeditation that, man, I'm gonna go after George today. It's just in the moment, passions took over and we got into a fight. That would be an unintentional, I think.
Yeah.
Didn't hate him previously.
I did not previously hate him, right? Just-
Not recently.
He
anyway.
he sat in my seat.
We do get territorial, don't we?
I didn't hate him till just now,
Yeah.
not previously.
Right. Okay, so now we're gonna skip forward to Joshua. So this is after they've entered the land. So then Yahweh spoke to Joshua, said, "Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, designate the cities of refuge, of which I spoke to you by the hand of Moses, that the manslayer who strikes down any person unintentionally without premeditation may flee there and shall become for you a refuge from the avenger of blood." So again, this is protection from the avenger. So they set apart Kadesh, Shechem, and Hebron, and these are on the west side of the Jordan, and they still have the cities on the east side, Bezar, Ramoth, and Golan. So these are the cities of refuge. You see they're marked there in red. And what do you notice? Anything that pops out or that you notice about the cities?
They're in red.
The red cities,
They're spread out.
There's space.
red square. Pardon?
Got some space between.
They got some space between them. Yeah, that's one thing. They
They're
are.
kind of in the middle,
Yeah.
sort of,
Yeah.
except for maybe right now.
Kind of lined up too.
Yeah.
And they're all
Okay.
consecutive.
All right, so there's several things that you notice about them. The intent here is that they are accessible. So the rule is they want them to be evenly spaced throughout the land, and to your point, like in the middle, so you can get there from either side of the territory. Later, this is not in the Deuteronomy text, but later if you read the Jewish laws and customs, they had a lot of rules around the cities of refuge. The roads between them could not cross a river without a bridge, so you couldn't have somebody who's fleeing have to traverse a river or something like that as they're trying to flee from somebody. There are rules about the roadway itself between the cities. They were to be wide. I think 40 feet was the rule, which it seems like a super highway back then. But these had to be, well-marked roads, well-paved roads, or smooth roads. There should be no obstacles to being able to move to these cities if you are fleeing a blood avenger. So that's the idea of the cities, is that they are accessible, they're evenly spaced, and you can get to one fairly quickly.
There seem to be an awful lot of rules around murder. Is murder a big problem?
Apparently it was an issue, because, yeah, there are a lot of rules around murder.
Well, Cain and Abel happen
Yeah.
pretty early, so.
Yeah. So there are 3 cities east of the Jordan, and then there are 3 cities west of the Jordan. That's another thing you notice over here. The Jordan River is a major separation in the land, so you don't have to cross the Jordan River to get to a city of refuge. And I would suppose that these are a little bit closer to each other, but I think like the Golan Heights, this is a higher area, so maybe they're closer because the terrain is more difficult to get to. I'm not sure about that, I'm just speculating, but the idea was that they are to be, evenly accessible throughout the land, or, relatively accessible. So those were the cities that were designated as cities of refuge.
I like that you were talking about Star Wars and then you were talking about Avengers.
Oh, yeah. All right.
You're a Pokemon by Marvel.
Or I mean Disney.
So what is a manslayer?
You had a question.
Yeah,
Well, I was kind of curious about these cities of refuge. Do they actually have a place for these people? They come running up the road and they get inside the city gate and then what happens? Do they have
the whole city.
to show themselves to somebody or?
Okay, so when they arrive at the city of refuge, there is if you're in the city of refuge, you are protected. It's agreement that you cannot slay somebody inside the city of refuge. But if there's a disagreement about whether or not you belong in the city of refuge, then the elders of the city can meet with you, they can hear your case. They'll hear you and the blood avenger, share both sides of the story, and the elders can decide you can come into the city and stay here, or they can choose to send you back out of the city, expel you from the city, basically, and say, no, you're guilty of murder. If they expel you from the city, the blood avenger then has the right to kill you. But the blood avenger cannot touch you inside the city. And the way they enforce that is if the blood avenger does kill somebody inside the city of refuge, then they are guilty of murder and they are put to death.
But if you flee to a city of refuge, once you arrive, you're still kind of on your own ticket for finding a place to sleep, paying for it, getting food, stuff like that.
So the elders, okay, so the elders, I thought I put this in the notes here, but maybe I didn't here.
There, is that it?
Yeah, okay, so the Old Testament law makes a distinction between intentional and unintentional. The killer can plead his case before the elders of the city of refuge. Okay, oh, here it is. If you're found to be unintentional, the killing, then you can stay, you can remain in the city of refuge, but they will grant you access, but you have to remain in the city until the chief priest dies.
But who takes care of them? Are they taken care of by the city?
They are not taken care of. You work. They are expected to find a job, work, contribute to the city. It is a functioning city. So you're expected to come in and they'll help you find work, use your skills to contribute to the city. It's not like a prison. You are in a city, but it is just a place where you're protected from the avenger.
So what happens after the chief priest dies?
Then they are free. They've paid their debt.
Oh, they're free.
Right.
Then they go back home.
And this is the
Blood
chief,
Avenger kills him, he's now a murderer.
Pardon?
I said, once that happens, if the Blood Avenger
Right.
kills them, he's now a
Then
murderer.
he's right. So once you have paid your debt, once you've
Yeah.
stayed in that city
You're
of
clear.
refuge until the chief priest dies, that's your time. Then you can return home and resume your original life and return to your family and things like this.
and the chief priest would be like Caiaphas or in Jerusalem?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that. I would assume, but I'm not sure.
I'm fleeing to the one with the oldest chief priest.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm
You know, you
saying.
kinda wonder if they kept a billboard of, hey, he's
Yeah,
he's got
okay.
consumption, this is where I'd
You
go.
know, if you're down here and you think, oh, the chief priest up here is 80 years old, well, that's where I'm going.
I'm taking the run.
Yeah.
That was quick.
Yeah, so try to get there as quickly as you can.
They
All right.
just unintentionally kill the chief priest.
Well,
Well, there's a slippery slope.
Oh, okay. All right, so again, the word manslayer, you'll see that used, I thought, well, that was maybe a unique word to my translation, but it is in most of the translations. It talks about the manslayer, and the word is rashak. That is actually the word for murderer. So the language doesn't make a distinction between unintentional and intentional. But translations, it does. Manslayer is considered the unintentional, but the murderer is the intentional. But in Hebrew, it's the same word. So the word is the same, but the law makes a distinction between the intent of the heart. Make sense? Okay. Let's see. And if found to be intentional, the killer is then released from the city and may be executed by the blood avenger. And the blood avenger is typically the closest family relative. So they have a right to pursue the murderer and execute them. And then, you know, there's no consequences for the blood avenger. He has that right to do so.
So if he doesn't do it, nobody else can do it.
Nobody else can do it. Only the blood avenger has the right.
So were there ever cases, well, I guess, or would you know if there would be cases where they chose not to do it?
I suppose so, but I don't know. That's not recorded. I know of in the word, but yeah, I suppose that could happen.
Could the murderer defend himself?
I think so. I mean, I don't know why you couldn't.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna stand there, so.
Yep. So,
He might kill the blood avenger.
That would be the plan.
yeah. But then you have to go to the city of refuge and, you know, then the cycle starts again. So, yeah. But it is an interesting system when you think about it. You know, they don't have the courts and everything set up. They don't have the prisons set up like we do in our society. This is their solution. You flee to a city, and the city is sort of like what you're saying. It's a sanctuary city. In some respects, it functions that way.
But it is a court too, right?
There is a court,
Yeah.
but they don't have the same, it's not the same type of, every case is heard and automatically goes into the court system. There is, you know, if there is a dispute, you know, we'll hear this case and we'll make this decision for you. All right, so let's look how this plays out. So we're going to talk about Joab and Abner. So I'm not going to read through. This comes out of 2 Samuel. Couldn't remember if it was first or second. So this is in 2 Samuel chapters 2 and 3. A lot of verses there to read. So I'm just going to try to summarize some of the events and help you understand what is going on here. So in chapter 2, there is a battle of Gibeon. And the battle of Gibeon was between Israel and Judah, David and Saul. And in this battle, Abner, who was a general, or this is not called a general, but just for the sake of our conversation, I'll just say he's the general, he's the chief military guy. He was the general for Israel, and he was defeated by Joab and David's army, or servants. So we have a battle between David and Saul is defeated. So after the battle, Abner, the general, is fleeing from the battle, and Joab's brother, as I can't pronounce that, Asahel, something like that, he pursues Abner. And Abner, during the pursuit, is saying, you know, get away, you know, don't do this, you don't want to do this. And, you know, but he keeps being pursued, and finally they stop, they have an altercation, and Abner kills Joab's brother. Well, this makes Joab, of course, very upset. So what does that establish, and based on what you know about the rules, what has just been established here? Is there does Joab have a right to pursue Abner?
I would think so.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's in a battle.
Well, it's after the battle.
Oh,
It's
it's
after the
after.
battle. Yeah.
But he's running away,
Yeah, he
and the
chases
other guy
him
keeps pursuing him
Yeah.
and says, go away, go away. Well, I'm gonna stick my shaft through your stomach and you'll die.
But you could also argue that you know, between Abner and the younger brother, there was some vitriol or some hatred there, and And
This is
Abner did stop and say, okay, look, I've warned you, and so now I'm gonna take you out. So, so in theory, Joab, maybe this is a case that would go to court, I don't know. But Joab at least considers himself to now have a blood vengeance on it. He's got it right.
Hold on, at that point, I'm seeing the Abner makes a covenant with David.
This is later.
Well, 312 comes before 326, unless you're saying they wrote it backwards.
Oh, okay, well, I'm still up here.
Yeah, I know, but you're saying, does Joab have the right to kill Abner? And there's some kind of deal with David in between there, so.
Well,
But-
okay,
and he
so,
was
so
pursued.
after his brother is killed, Abner kills his brother in
I
chapter
know
2.
that, Christie.
So in chapter 2, Joab would be the blood avenger for his brother.
Agreed.
So he now has
Against
a right.
Abner.
Okay, so he now has a claim
Right.
to pursue Abner. Okay. All right, so now we continue in chapter 3.
But you can almost say that Abner, basically, he had a right to kill him, because he was pursued.
Mhm.
And
So, okay, we may be overthinking this a little bit. So let's say in Joab's mind, does he have a
Sure.
right? Okay, so that's what we're looking at. So Joab considers himself to have the right to pursue Abner. Now, again, this could be something that would have to be adjudicated, but in Joab's mind, he considers his right or his duty to pursue Abner. Okay, so, in chapter 3, we continue down, and chapter 3 starts off, Abner is in the house of Saul, and he takes one of Saul's concubines, Rizpah, he takes her as his wife. And that is traditionally seen as a claim to the throne, that, you don't take the king's wife or the king's concubine if you're not in line for the throne. Well, and that would make sense because Abner was rising in popularity, rising in strength. His stature was well known in the kingdom, and he was a trusted servant to Saul. Well, Saul's son gets word of this, and he says, well, wait a minute, I should be king. I should be ascending to the throne, not you. So they have a disagreement. They have a falling out. So Abner says, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go over here to David's side, and I'm gonna help David establish his kingdom over the entire, both Israel and Judah. So reunite the kingdom. And so that's what Abner does. He goes to David, says, I want to make a covenant with you. David enters into a covenant with him, and then Abner ends up working for David, and he goes to the house of Benjamin, which is where Saul is from, and he convinces the leaders there to join forces with David. And once that happens, everything else falls into place. And so Abner goes into to meet with David, and where do they meet? They meet in Hebron. Why do they meet in Hebron?
Sanctuary city.
Yeah.
It's a sanctuary city. Why do you think Abner's saying, I want to meet you in Hebron?
Just in case.
Just in case. He knows that there is a claim on his head. So he's going to meet with David in Hebron, and they have a nice banquet, a party there. David celebrates, Abner, and then he does what? He sends him out in peace. So what does that mean to send him out in peace?
Disagreement resolved, conflict resolved.
Okay, well,
He's not king yet, is he?
he's king of Judah.
Okay,
So he sends, and
so
now.
he has some authority at that level.
But now he is, at this point, he's united both kingdoms,
Yeah.
and he sends Abner out in peace. My understanding from what I've read is this is basically like a
Pardon?
pardon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he's king. That's why I was asking the king piece.
Yeah, it's
He
basically
should
like,
have that authority.
Right, it's basically like a pardon. It says, whatever you've done, it doesn't make, you go out, and if anybody touches you, you know, they have to answer to me. He's untouchable. When David says, go out in peace, that's what that means. It means you can live your life in peace in my kingdom, and I will, you know, your life, you know, I will guarantee, you know, your life.
However,
Pardon?
however,
Joab,
Joab,
of course, he didn't like this. First of all, Joab was one of David's trusted advisors. He was the head of his army, and now Abner is getting all the accolades and getting all the attention. Plus, Abner killed his brother. How do you think Joab feels at this point?
angry.
He's still harboring a grudge.
He's a little bit ticked off, yeah. So Joab sent men, he's still the leader of the army, so he sent a bunch of men to go and find Abner and say, come back to Hebron. You know, again, come back to the city, you know, so, the refuge city. So Abner agrees, we'll come back to the refuge city, and while he's there, Joab meets him in the gate under the pretense of, I gotta tell you something, kind of takes him off to the side and stabs him, kills him.
In the sanctuary city,
In the
after David has pardoned him.
Exactly. All right, so now, the rest of the story, David, you know, mourns his death, and he's anguished by this, but he doesn't do anything to Joab. So Joab really gets off scot-free from this, until, 1 Kings. So, 1 Kings, this is David on his deathbed, and he's talking to his son Solomon. So, you wanna tell the story, Bob? You're smiling.
He said to Solomon, take care of Joab.
Yeah.
Because of what he's done. So Solomon went ahead and had his,
He hadn't had his comeuppance yet.
yep, so Solomon had sent his chief battle guy, and
Yep.
Joab prayed to the altar.
I don't know how much time elapsed between these two, but the point here is that this is something that David thought about for the rest of his life.
Right.
And on his deathbed, he's like,
It's
dude,
not like the next day,
No,
he
it
had
had
a whole
It'd
reign.
been 30 years.
okay, yeah, I didn't know the time frame. Yeah, it'd been a
A
while.
long time.
And he had carried this with him to his deathbed, and he regretted it on his deathbed and said, Solomon, go to Joab, make him pay.
So it'd been 33 years.
Yeah,
Yeah. So Joab got a long stay of execution.
yep.
Because
So that's-
He did that again with another
Yes.
general.
It wasn't just one, it's two.
Joab was also David's nephew.
I forgot about that. Yeah, and that may explain why he had a little bit of compassion for him up front, a little bit of mercy for him.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
interesting.
so anyway, that's, you know, the story of Joab and Abner, and kind of how the sanctuary city comes into play. I said sanctuary, city of refuge. See what you did, Bob? So that's how the city of refuge kind of comes into play, and you see it illustrated in this process. All right. So the next topic here is boundary markers. And this is kind of interesting. This is one verse in chapter 19. It says, you shall not move your neighbor's boundary mark, which the ancestors have set in your inheritance, which you will inherit in the land that Yahweh your God gives you to possess. And I had the same question that Alan asked about murder. Is this really an issue? Well, apparently it is. You know, there's several other verses here. Deuteronomy 27:7 says, "Cursed is the man who moves his neighbor's boundary." This is the chapter on, you know, blessings and curses. We'll get to that here in a couple of weeks, or 3 weeks, or whatever. Proverbs 22 says, "Do not move the ancient boundary which your fathers made." Proverbs 23 says, "Do not move the ancient boundary, and do not come into the fields of the orphans." In Hosea it says, "Ephraim will become a desolation in the day of reproof among the tribes of Israel. I will make known what is true to the princes of Judah. The princes of Judah have become like those who moved a boundary." And then even in Job says, some move boundaries, they seize and devour flocks. So this was apparently an issue, and why it was placed in the text right here, why Moses mentioned it right here, I can't answer that question. Only
They're
Moses
getting
will be able to
ready,
answer
they're
that.
getting ready to go into the land
Well, that's
soon.
true, they are.
And so
they're-
he's saying, hey, look, you're gonna get there, don't do this, you know?
Yeah, but as far as why he put it right in this particular, topic, or between these two topics, and why he didn't expand on it more, but it's just kind of interesting that he just kind of threw that verse in there.
Probably like,
That's-
oh, before I forget, I was gonna tell you this.
That's it, squirrel, while I'm thinking about it, don't move the boundary markers.
Well, you might be angry if somebody moved your boundary and it was your land,
Mhm.
so,
And they're stealing.
Yeah,
Who is this?
it reminds me of, a job I had several years ago. We had, all the walls were just these temporary cube walls and everything, and they were all just on legs, nothing was permanently installed. And there were people in the office who, every day they'd come in and they would take their wall and just bump it about like a quarter or a half inch, And over the course of about a year, pretty soon some guy over here is like, my cube is now this big, because every day somebody, is pushing in on it from both directions. So that was a common,
Why did you do that?
yeah. That was a common practice. We were moving the boundary markers just a little bit every day. So, nobody noticed it on a daily basis, but over time, it became evident.
Maybe back to that kerfuffle.
Yeah, then we go back to that kerfuffle. We're gonna have a kerfuffle here. Okay. How we doing on time? All right, so eyewitnesses. So I'm gonna start in Deuteronomy. Let's go back to, okay, I got my text here. So a single witness shall rise up against a man on account of any.
Shall not.
What?
Shall not.
A single witness shall not rise up, thank you, against a man on account of any iniquity or any sin which he has committed. At the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, a matter shall be established. So that's the general rule here, is that you cannot have a single witness. If you have a dispute with somebody, you have to bring 2 or 3 witnesses to establish your case. You can't make a decision with just one witness. If a malicious witness rises up against a man to accuse him of wrongdoing, then both of the men who have the dispute shall stand before Yahweh, before the priests and before the judges who will be in office in those days. And the judges shall inquire thoroughly, they'll have this lengthy trial, they'll question them, find out all the facts, and then you shall do to him just as he intended to do to his brother. Thus you shall purge the evil from among you. So, in other words, if a false witness comes forward and he's found to be a false witness during the trial, the elders determined this is a false witness, then whatever he had intended for the other person, that will be done to him. So that kind of, if you're gonna be a false witness, you better make sure you got a pretty good story that can pass.
Stop a lot of, lying and,
Right.
and wrong,
Right.
So the false witnesses against Christ should have been crucified.
Well, let's go to
Do
that.
that, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. It's a good question, actually, when you present it
Because
that
they
way.
couldn't find 2 witnesses to corroborate anything they said at his trial. They would have one that said, he said such and such, but they couldn't find a second one to corroborate.
Yeah. Well,
They did
okay.
wind up in hell, so I'm thinking they're paying for it.
That's an interesting thought. So I think, would they actually go to trial without, because the first requirement is you have to bring at least 2 or 3 witnesses. You can't even have a trial without 2 or 3 witnesses, but if there's false witnesses, this is another thing, is it would seem to me that if you're going to be a false witness, you have to almost collaborate or corroborate with another person.
So isn't, I suppose the one witness is usually the accuser, right?
Yeah.
So the accuser has to have somebody to back
Somebody
up the
gets to back
story.
him up, right, back up the story. All right, so the rules for eyewitnesses, summarizing this, a single eyewitness is not sufficient. An accuser must bring at least 2 or 3 witnesses to the trial. A malicious witness, disputes are heard by the priests and judges if there is suspected to be a malicious witness. If the accusation is deemed false or malicious, then the punishment intended for the accused is applied to the false witness. So that would shut down a lot of our cases right now.
Well,
Okay.
and verse 21 is the one that gets taken out of context a lot. The eye for the eye, tooth for the tooth,
Mm-hmm,
you know,
right,
they're doing it for false testimony, not for, I'm gonna get you back
right.
for what you did to me. It was,
Yeah, that's
False
true. That's a good point. Yeah. All right, so in Matthew 18, moving forward to the New Testament, Jesus reiterates this rule. It says, now if your brother sins, go to him, go and show him his fault. However, sorry about that. Now, if your brother sins, go and show him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have won your brother. But if he does not listen to you, take 1 or 2 more with you, so 1 or 2 more witnesses with you, so that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every fact may be confirmed. So even in this idea of church discipline, or, confronting your brother, this doesn't necessarily have to be church discipline, but if you're confronting a brother, you start by going to him in private. And if you can resolve it between the 2 of you, great, you move on. If not, then you gather 2 or 3 witnesses and you go to that person. So, so again, the second verse here, the verse 16, if there's a disagreement between the 2 brothers, then you bring witnesses in to establish the facts.
So I used to think that it was, the 2 or 3 witnesses was in the second meeting, you have witnesses so that you can determine what was said in that meeting. But this, the way you're playing this, it sounds like you're bringing additional witnesses to convince the person that.
No, I think you're right. I think in the first meeting, you go to him alone.
Right.
It's the first meeting. You first try to resolve it between the 2 of you. If he doesn't listen to you, or if there's a dispute at that point, then you go with 2 or 3 witnesses.
Right, but the witnesses, what are they witnessing? Are they witnessing the second meeting, or are they witnessing the facts of the initial dispute?
Oh, I think.
I think it's the initial
Possibly
dispute.
some
Yeah, that's what I would say, is you bring 2 or 3 witnesses that can, corroborate the evidence. So if I'm, for example, accusing you of stealing something, I think, George, you really shouldn't be embezzling or something, and we talk about it, and I can't convince you, then I might find a couple people that, hey, we have the evidence here.
Well, don't bring Scott, because no one would believe him anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, the 2 witnesses is not to witness our conversation, it's to, establish,
makes a lot more sense, actually.
yes, we have the goods, we can prove it.
So that's part of elder discipline.
Yeah. That's true. And then what's the next step after that, Bob?
You go to the church.
Have you guys had to do that in our church?
I think we got very close to it, but that was a number of years ago.
Yes, we have. Where someone has,
They wind up leaving the church.
who has not repented and sees no fault, then they technically are not welcome. Usually they leave on their own.
I've only been a part of this one time that I can recall. As our previous church also. We had a meeting after church one day, and the pastor said, basically, we'll bring this to the church. This person, we're not gonna even talk about what he did or anything like that, just, but he is now out of fellowship. And pastor, if you have questions, you come to me directly, all that kind of stuff. He did it very well. But that person ended up actually being restored back to the fellowship. They handled it very well. He didn't leave the church.
We've had several that have been restored.
Yeah. So the church discipline can be very effective if it's handled correctly and with love and, patience, things like that. So anyway, Jesus affirms the idea of having two witnesses. All right, so the next section here, I'm going to read through John chapter 8, a few verses. In John chapter 8, most of what Klingler is doing in this study is he's taking Deuteronomy, then he takes the passage in Deuteronomy, and he goes forward into the New Testament or some other application to see where that verse is applied. But if you look at John chapter 8, you can look backwards and you can find multiple verses in Deuteronomy. And so that I'm going to take a slightly different lens and read through John chapter 8 and look back at all the verses it's referencing from that particular chapter. So we start in John chapter 8, verses 3 through 9. It says, the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman caught in adultery, and having set her in the center of the court, they said to him, Teacher, this woman has been caught in adultery in the very act. Now, the woman here in verses 3 and 4, this is, the word there is gune, or woman. And I bring that up because here in a minute you'll see a different word used. In verse 5 it says, now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such a woman. And here it's, I cannot pronounce it, toitos or something like that is the word used here. Toioutos. That word translated this woman really means this type. So he's now almost making it's not referring to her as a woman anymore, really. He's saying this kind is, commanded to be stoned. So it's kind of a derogatory or a dismissive term that they're using at this point. It says the law of Moses commands us to stone such women. Then what do you say? And then in verse 6 says they were saying this, testing him, so that he might have evidence to accuse him. So they might have evidence to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down with his finger and wrote on the ground. But when they persisted asking him, he straightened up and said to them, Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw the stone at her. So again he stooped down and wrote on the ground, and when they saw it, they began to go out one by one, beginning with the older ones, and he was left alone, and the woman where he was in the center of the court. Okay, so there's a lot of things I want to point out here. At the very beginning in verse 3 and 4, first of all, are there legitimate witnesses here?
Yes.
Okay, so what makes a legitimate witness?
Someone was there.
Okay,
Apparently they were there because they were caught in the very act.
is there a malicious witness here?
But they're all pretty malicious.
Okay, can you be a malicious witness and a legitimate witness at the same time?
Yes.
I think, yeah, probably.
Where's the man?
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's one of the problems that we'll see is the man is not there. So we also see that why are they presenting this woman to him?
To test him.
To test him. So they have malicious intent. It's not for the woman's, this is really to test Jesus.
She's a byproduct on this one.
The woman is the byproduct in this argument. That's exactly right. So in that sense, the witnesses are malicious. They're not, they're not concerned about the adultery. They're concerned about trapping Jesus. That's the intention here.
So it's all about the heart.
Right. So let's see. Deuteronomy 22:22 says, if a man is found lying with a married woman, then both of them shall die. The man who lay with the woman and the woman, thus you shall purge the evil from Israel. If there is a girl who is a virgin engaged to a man and another man finds her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out of the gate of that city, and you shall stone them, and they will die. The girl, because she did not cry out in the city, and the man, because he has violated his neighbor's wife. Thus you shall purge the evil from among you. So going back to what Bob was saying, there should be a man with her to stand trial. They didn't bring the man. They're only bringing the woman. So first of all, it is an illegitimate trial. So they're not following the rules.
You think that maybe that's what Jesus was writing down there?
Well, okay, so I haven't thought about that. I'm not sure if my thought is right, but I have a thought. So let's see. As they were saying this, let's see, let's go over here. Okay, so Deuteronomy 9:9. So this is referring to when he was writing. It says, when I went up to the mountain to receive the tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant which Yahweh had cut with you, then I remained in the mountain 40 days and nights. This is Moses talking. I neither ate bread nor drank water. And Yahweh gave me the 2 tablets of stone written by the finger of God, and on them were all the words which Yahweh had spoken with you, the mountain from the midst of the fire on the day of assembly. So I've read a couple of commentators, and this seems like it's a bit of a stretch, but it could be true because we don't really know what he wrote on the ground. But since there is so much of Deuteronomy woven into this story, could Jesus have been referencing, like, I'm writing with my finger, not necessarily what he's writing, but who wrote this to begin with, guys? He's making his claim, I'm God. I and Father are one. I actually wrote these rules, guys. So he could be making that case. I don't know.
There's a lot of speculation on it, but I've always thought he could have also been, since it says the oldest went out for, I just wonder if he didn't start writing down the name of women that were married that these dudes had flings with. I mean, there's so many.
Yeah, it's all.
I feel like that he could have been writing out the 10 Commandments, and that they became so convicted based on thou shalt not bear false witness, and just the whole bit that they started. The older guys got it first. They were like, "Holy crap! I have just broken the law," and started wandering off.
And Jesus is the one without sin, right? So if anyone was going to cast a stone, it would be him.
Yep.
And you start with him, and if he doesn't cast it, then no one else is qualified.
So verse, so backing up before I move on, you're all right. There's everything we say about what was written and what it meant is pure speculation. So we just have to establish that. But I do find it interesting that the language here, that the 2 tablets were written by the finger of God, and he wrote with his finger. It's very similar language, and so that's where a couple of commentators say that he may have been trying to reference that or point that out.
So in my study notes here, it says how they were going to trick him. If he said she should not be stoned, then they could accuse him of violating Moses' law. But if he urged them to stone her, they could report him to the Romans, who did not permit Jews to carry out their own executions.
Right. Yep. So it was a catch-22 because Romans did not allow execution. So Deuteronomy 17:7, the witnesses were to cast the first stone. So back up, starting with verse 6. Deuteronomy 17:6. On the mouth of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses, he who is to die shall be put to death. He shall be put to death on the mouth. He shall not be put to death on the mouth of 1 witness. The hand of the witness shall be the first against him to put him to death, and afterward the hand of all the people. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. So the witnesses are the ones who are to cast the first stones, and then after they cast the first stones, then all the people follow. But Jesus invites one without sin to cast the first stone. That is the non-malicious, if there's a non-malicious witness. However, given that the Pharisees came to test Jesus, they have malicious intent. So there is not a pure witness, so to speak, at this event. And they didn't follow the rules of engagement as far as having the man there to stand trial with him as well.
Does that make this an unforgivable sin? We're not told whether, anybody asked for forgiveness, but
Jesus,
was that
I
even
don't know
considered?
that's unforgivable, but
Jesus forgave him.
forgave.
But the law said, you stone her.
Mm-hmm. There's one other piece here I was looking for. They didn't produce a male counterpart, nor they have evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. Okay, so when Jesus asks, where are those who condemn you? He's alluding to the fact that there are not 2 or 3 legitimate witnesses. And such, Jesus does not condemn her. I don't know if I pulled from a commentary. I'm not sure if I fully agree with that, but it's interesting. He says, because the witnesses are not there, I cannot condemn you either.
Go and sin no more.
Go and sin no more. So that's the writer is standing on the fact that there are no witnesses, so Jesus did not condemn her. But I also think Jesus knows, knows all.
So the thing that, the way it's set up in Deuteronomy is it is our presumption of innocence, right?
Mm-hmm.
It probably dates back to that essentially, but the idea is it's better to let a guilty person go free than to wrongly convict an innocent person. And so to follow the law, has to not condemn her because there isn't a single witness. There isn't 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses.
So under the law, he cannot condemn her.
Right, even though he then says, go and sin no more, right?
Right.
So maybe he knows she's sinful, but.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, because I was a little bit, because he knows that she sinned.
Right.
Yeah, but he cannot condemn her, but it's under the law he cannot condemn her, but then he tells her, go and sin no more. But the other thing that's interesting is that he said, let him who is without sin cast the first stone, and they all start backing away. So who received mercy at that moment?
They did, because they were false witnesses.
Exactly. So they also received mercy in that instance. So I think this Jesus is showing that his authority over the law as well. But he showed mercy in that moment. All right, so that's eyewitnesses. We're running a little bit short on time. So I'll quickly go through this section on warfare. This is chapter 20. It says, if you go out to battle against your enemies and see the horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them. Yahweh your God, who brought you from the land of Egypt, is with you. So who is doing the battle for the people when they go out to possess the lands in Canaan?
Yahweh.
Pardon?
Yahweh.
Yahweh, God is doing the battle. Should they be afraid?
No.
Is there any doubt who's going to win the battle?
No.
As long as they're following God and obeying Him, it is Yahweh who is going to fight the battle and win. Now, the officers shall also speak to the people, saying, the man who has built a new house and has not dedicated it, let him go and return to his house. The man who has planted a vineyard and has not begun to use the fruit, let him, be excused. The man who is engaged to a woman has not yet married her, let him go and return to his home. These guys are excused from the battle. Then the last one here says, the man who is afraid and whose heart is faint, let him also return home. We don't want you in the battle. So these are exemptions for warfare. So there's the first three are intended to preserve the community. So if you think about it, what is the purpose of the warfare? They are conquering a Canaan.
Taking the land.
Pardon?
To take the land.
To take the land. Now, there's an element of punishment in there for, their sin, their disobedience, but also the reason that they are possessing the land, they're going to battle to take the land, is to establish a place where Israel could live in peace and prosperity and worship God. So they are trying to establish their home. That's the ultimate goal of the warfare of taking the land. This is the land that God had promised to them. So if you think about it, that's the ultimate goal, and God is going to win the battle, then these other elements of building homes, planting the vineyard, those are important parts of the community. It's important that people stay home and take care of the community. Those people stay and plant the crops and plant the vineyards and, have children and raise families and things like that. That's part of establishing the nation and the community. So those are important as well. So those people are excused from the battle. This one down here, the man who is faint-hearted, that doesn't have anything to do with promoting the community, but would you want to have a faint-hearted person on the front lines with you? They're going to infect the rest of the.
Or run when you need them not to.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's going to excuse that person as well. So there are exemptions to battle.
So, just from my benefit, faint-hearted, what does that exactly mean?
Afraid.
Okay, so that's fearful, not
Fearful.
necessarily that you're gonna faint, like your health issues.
Well, I guess it's the same, fainting is, if you're, fearful, it's a kind of a euphemism, but faint-hearted is,
So it's talking more in fear, not health.
it's right, exactly. It's it's not a health issue, it's a fear issue.
Okay.
That's correct. Okay, so, in Luke, and I apologize, I probably don't have time to go through all of this, but, Jesus tells a couple of parables. I'm gonna skip down to, the parable of the dinner. It says, this is in chapter 14, verses 16 to 24. But when they were reclining at the table with him and heard this, he said to them, "Blessed is everyone who will eat of the bread of the kingdom of God." This is one of the disciples were saying this. That's not on this screen. And then he said to him, a man who is giving a big dinner, and he invited many. At the dinner hour, he sent his slave to say to those who have been invited, "Come in, for everything is ready now." So what is this depicting? What is this a picture of? This parable. Okay.
The kingdom.
All right, so the kingdom of heaven. So we have a host, he's inviting people, and then they all begin to make excuses. Now look at the excuses they're making for not accepting the invitation. They have, I have bought a piece of land and I need to go look at it. That's the same thing, it's the same excuse as, I'm building a house and I need to, work on my house. I haven't occupied it yet. I have bought 5 yoke and oxen. I'm gonna go try them out. Same principle as I've got crops in the vineyard. I haven't harvested them yet. I've got animals I need to go tend to. I just bought them. I need to go take care of my animals.
Well, it's disingenuous. You don't buy land before you look at it.
Yeah.
You don't buy oxen until you've tested them.
Well, but the point here is they're using the same excuses that were exemptions in Deuteronomy. But what is their point here? Were they true?
No, they're disingenuous.
Right. They're using this.
They're lying.
They're lying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Their point here. They're rejecting the king. They're rejecting the invitation, and so it is. In Deuteronomy, the people who are staying back and taking care of the fields and taking care of their homes, they're still part of the community. They're still part of what's going on. And they're doing that in the bigger picture to help the community establish Israel. Here, they're just rejecting the offer altogether. So that's the distinction here in Luke. But I thought it was interesting, I never really noticed this before, but each of these items ties right back to Deuteronomy, and you can see the parallel, but here their heart is different, so. Anyway, if
So
that's,
there's some, if we
Go
have a
ahead.
minute, there's some cool ties there, like, they're going into the promised land to get the land promised to Abraham and
Right.
his descendants. And what are they gonna have? They're gonna have homes and vineyards, right? And they're gonna marry and have children. Here, Jesus is offering them the culmination of the prophecies to Abraham, the promises to Abraham. You're gonna have the kingdom in Israel if you accept it, and they're making these excuses.
Mhm. So, so this overall passage, I have a note here, it says, this passage is a condemnation of Israel for the rejection of the king while trying to justify the rejection of the law. So, so anyway, so it's just a different take on Luke that I've really noticed before. I'd always read this passage and, oh, yeah, they're just making excuses. But it's actually tying right back into Deuteronomy. So, and we are out of time. I apologize, I appreciate your patience and letting me continue. I think that's the last slide, basically. Next week is Mother's Day, so we will not meet for Mother's Day, just a reminder about that.
Thank you.
Yep.